You know, there's a saying that says that if people don't know your passion, then you don't have one. And one of the things I'm very passionate about is visitation. I'm passionate about being in the streets. And when I talk to my staff, when I talk to people who come and visit us in New York, as I'm traveling and preaching to people on the road, I'm constantly talking about visitation and the importance of it. But inevitably it comes up, well, what about the problems? You know, what about the bad things that happen? What about this when it goes wrong and that when it goes wrong? To me, you know the way I look at problems? I look at problems as opportunities to see God at work. I look forward to problems. There was a time in my life when things bad would happen to me, I'd get discouraged and depressed. And God has taught me that those problems, those things that maybe are too difficult for me to solve on my own, are times when He can intervene in our life. And so I want to spend a few minutes, Pastor Bill and I, talking about problems, things to expect, things to avoid, things to look out for, and realize that it's a risk. Anytime that you do something like this, you break out of the box, as Pastor Bill has said a few times. Anytime you go into places that people haven't gone before, done things that people haven't done before, you're opening yourself up to risks, to problems. And those risks aren't all bad. Some of them can be good, and they'll help you grow in the things of God.
And you know, it's no sense in the people thinking it's negative either, Chris. I think sometimes when you hear about the bad parts, it sounds like we're going to be a little negative here. This isn't meant to be negative. It's not a negative confession, per se. It's just being realistic. The politically correct term for this would be challenges. Well, let me tell you something. They're not challenges, they're just problems. It's just going to be a problem. And we can call it whatever you want, but there'll be some things that you'll face, as in any part of ministry. The more you do, the more of a risk it's going to be. We have 50 buses, folks, in New York. Stay with me here, okay? 50 buses, okay? Do you have any idea the logistics of that? We have 50 buses running up and down ghetto streets with people shooting, throwing rocks, running out in front of us. We not only have run into cars, we've run over cars. You say, how could a bus run over a car? Well, you know, I don't know how that happened, but it happened. You know, we've had all kinds of problems. So that would automatically put us in a place where people say, my goodness, why in the world would you even consider doing that? Because it's a risk. Sure it is. Yeah, it's a risk. But see, again, if you want to see something happen, again, it's never happened before, you're going to have to step out of the box. You're going to have to begin doing things that you have never done before.
True.
It's very easy to get within the walls. It's very easy to live within the framework of life that the church has created, that you've created for yourself, and say, I feel safe here. And you're right. It's, what is that quote, Chris, that I've used? Oh, a ship in a harbor is safe. But that's not what ships are made for.
That's right.
That's what they're, yeah, if you sit in the harbor, you're not going to have a problem. When you get out, it's going to be a risk. You're taking a chance. But we were created to go out.
That's right.
To go out and take the gospel out. And the people are not always going to come to you. Yes, it's a risk. Yes, there's going to be problems. Yes, there's going to be situations. But we've got to take all that into consideration, right, Chris.
And like I said, allow God the opportunity to work and to do miracles. Let's start off right off the gate with the toughest thing that people are always scared about. Let's talk about problems with sexual abuse. Along with this videotape, we're going to include some paperwork and stuff that we do. We have a standard code of conduct that I go over with all of my workers twice a year so that there's no questions on what constitutes sexual abuse, on what to stay away from, on who to report to if they see anything that's questionable, what to say, what to do. All that is going to be included because it's better to avoid that problem altogether. We've been involved in a few situations where it's been difficult to deal with stuff like that because you're not really sure how to handle things. Right. And that's why we came up with that standard code of conduct. And it's important that you maintain that in your church as well, because that's so important, so important. Even if you know everybody that works, even if you know everybody that's involved, even if everybody's a Christian, it's still just a good thing to have so that everybody knows where you stand as a leader when it comes to having that standard code.
And I think one of the things that the folks need to know is, because if you have a written policy, it makes it look like if there's somebody that questions you, if there's someone that comes in and says, well, what about this, this, and this? All you have to do is say, yes, we have that right here. And so it's very easy then to present a certain image that, yes, we do care, yes, we are aware, yes, we are very much in control of this thing, rather than getting caught off guard and saying, well, we don't know, because those aren't the right answers if someone is trying to put you in a situation that is not good. There are a lot of people that are just looking for it. There are a lot of parents. It's the climate of this time in which we live.
It's true. Another question that a lot of people have for me is what happens when we get a lot of unsaved kids in. We've got kids that have never been to church before. They're writing four-letter words in the bathroom. They're tearing up the walls. They're causing fights with the deacons' kids. And now we're just going to get rid of them because we can't handle them anymore. Those are problems that a lot of people have that can be avoided. Mm-hmm. Again, if you're prepared going into it, and that's the purpose of having this videotape, so that you'll be prepared going into it. One of the things that I always strive to say is that not only, you know how your teachers are feeling when they're put in a classroom with kids they don't understand, but imagine how the kids are feeling. You know, the whole process of education that goes along with the kids that have been growing up in church. They know how to act in church. They know how to answer all the questions in church. They know what's required of them in church. Well, kids that have never been to church, they haven't had that education, and so they don't know. You know, nobody ever told them they had to stay in their seat. Mm-hmm. How come you're telling them? Nobody ever explained to them why they close their head and close their eyes and bow their head.
Sometimes it's the other way too. I've seen that
Nobody ever told them why that should happen. But you know what? If you begin that process of education early, it'll begin to make sense to them. Sometimes I've encouraged people to have separate classes, maybe a Sidewalk Sunday school class where they will bring kids from the neighborhood and have a program for them before they try to mainstream them into the other Sunday school classes. Or maybe a program on Saturday. That program on Saturday could be, I know a lot of churches that have their Saturday programs that reach out to the unsaved kids, and then after they learn how to act in church, they begin to get mainstreamed back into the regular church setting on Sundays.
And let's stop right there for just a minute, because I think a lot of people have looked at the Saturday Sunday school concept that, you know, we developed there in New York and now is literally spread all over the world. But I think a lot of people look at that as saying, well, you're segregating. And I have to talk straight with you here, folks. In our case, it's not at all. And I think in a lot of cases, maybe in a suburban situation where you're dealing with maybe Hispanic kids or black kids or other groups, people say, well, you just don't want them mixing with maybe the middle to upper middle class white constituency that, that may be in the already existing church. I don't think that's the case. If that's the case, the motivation's wrong. But I think what we're saying here is by being able to do these other separate programs, you are ministering to that particular group of kids where their need is. Mm-hmm. Whether instead of mixing these kids together, where you've got a kid, as you said, that has all this experience, that knows all of this, that's been raised in church, all of a sudden another group of kids that has never been to church in their life comes in, and there's going to be a conflict just by the nature of that. It has nothing to do with black, white, Hispanic, Asian, nothing. It's the nature of mixing groups that aren't used to interacting with each other and have really no knowledge. So this is where the Sidewalk Sunday School, the Saturday Sunday School, so many of these concepts that have worked so well for us and are working so well for others, whether it be suburban or urban, is maybe something that some of you may want to take into consideration. And this is certainly a good argument for that.
It's true. There's a lot of reasons, like I said before, there's a lot of reasons not to do visitation. There's a lot of reasons not to have kids come into church. But it goes back to there's one reason why we should. It's because God mandated it. And if you begin to realize that these things we're talking about, these problems, are all kinds of good excuses that people have for not doing it. You know, I have heard every criticism in the book. I even remember a time when I was working in a church and some of the deacons said that they didn't want the brown kids in church. You know, a lot of that prejudice and stuff you're going to face from people that you would have never imagined that it would come from. And it's sad, and it's a good reason not to do it. It's a good reason not to stand up and face the criticism and face the hard times. But you know what? There still comes back to there's one good reason why you should do it. And that one good reason outweighs all the others. So people are they're going to criticize you from within and from without.
When you start getting a group of unsaved people. I don't care if they're kids, teenagers, or adults. When you start getting people, new people, unsaved people, into your program at any level, folks, there is going to, and I like what you said, Chris, the criticism is going to come from places that you would have never guessed. Why? Because it brings out deep-seated feelings. And can I use the word prejudice? Maybe I need to. I don't know. If the shoe fits here, then wear it. But there will be feelings that will instantly be brought to the surface that you never saw before. Why? Because you never had those people in your church before. See, but instantly, I've been in some of these churches that are, that are deacon possessed, and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, and these guys will all of a sudden get this holier than thou attitude. Folks, the church is not just a place where we can just sit in for our little, I don't know and I don't care. All I want's my rocking chair and our little group of people that we just like. It is a hospital for the community, for those that are hurting. And if we don't understand the basic function of a New Testament church, then you'll never understand what we're saying here. And neither will anybody else. Jesus came that people may have life and have it more abundantly. And if we can't present that to people that need it the most in a way that's relevant and is understandable and certainly is personable to them, then we've missed it. And your church will become just another institution on another block in another community. And if that's all we want, then that's fine. But I don't believe that's a New Testament church.
No, it's not. It's not. And as you're beginning to realize some of these problems, some of these things that we're facing, we're not saying you're going to run into all of these things. Pastor Bill has always said, no profits here. No,
it's a non-profit corporation. And you don't have to be a prophet to figure this stuff out. You just know that it's part of it. And what we are, instead of you just being surprised or discouraged when these things happen, we're just telling you there's a very strong possibility that you're going to deal with these things. I've dealt with them. He's dealt with them. And it's what I say when I go out and speak. Even, you know who I fight more? I don't fight the drug dealers on the corner in Brooklyn half as much as I fight criticism in the Christian community. Still, at this point in my life, I'm still dealing with it. So if I'm going to deal with it, I guarantee you, folks, you're going to have to deal with it too.
It's true, and it'll happen, it'll come, but again, God expects us to step up to the plate. He expects us to step out and go places that people haven't gone before. In this generation of kids that are coming up, these guys are tired of seeing the status quo. They're tired of seeing things the way they've always been. Let's talk about workers. You're going to have problems with your workers. It's going to be hard to keep them motivated. It's going to be hard to deal with the laziness. All kinds of workers' problems. You're either not going to have enough or the workers you've got aren't committed to it. But again, one of the hardest jobs you'll have is training and motivating people. It's like pushing a car uphill.
That's right.
The minute you stop, it's going to roll right back down and roll over you. But it's a struggle. It's a work. Of all the things that Jesus told us to pray for, He said, pray to the Lord to send laborers forth into the harvest. And you'll struggle with the laziness, maybe fear. Someone will be afraid to knock on doors. But these are all things that you can overcome, that through your leadership, through you setting the example. They might not have love, maybe no zeal. They don't have any goals. I've heard it said that if you have nothing worth dying for, then you have nothing worth living for. And it's easy a lot of times to see the workers who are satisfied with status quo, and you've got to help them break out of that. But it comes from you desiring to break out of that first.
Doing the same thing, essentially, with your workers as we're doing with you right now. Maybe you're just watching this tape by yourself, just to see what it's like. Maybe you're going to show it to your workers. Maybe you're going to take the information that we're giving you and the motivation we're trying to impart to you. Maybe you want to take that. But see, what we're doing with you folks is perpetual. What we're doing here is the same thing we do with our people in New York. It is a constant, perpetual process of letting people see the need. Keep that sense of urgency in front of them. Keep that sense of burden in front of them. Let them see you. They are watching you. They are looking at you. If they see you motivated, again, going back to what we said earlier, the greatest motivation to your workers is going to be your living testimony and example and the drive that you have. When they see you keep going, then they're going to keep going. When they see you having this burden burning in your bones, that's going to happen. You become the catalyst for the motivation. You become the factor. Let the Spirit of God work through you, and it'll be transferred to the people around you. There are actually 10 things that become very critical when we're talking about looking for folks that can help you, training and motivating workers, and not only for the folks that you work with, but it's kind of a self-checklist yourself. And this is by looking at it, you can say, are these people qualified? Are these people up to this just by looking at this list? But then you need to also look at yourself and saying, am I up to this? Am I in the place where I need to be in order to be able to go out and be the representative of Jesus Christ that I need to be to a world that maybe has really never met him before or never seen a real Christian before? A few things. Number one, you must be a dedicated Christian. Hopefully would go without saying. Number two, be faithful and consistent in that visitation program, regardless of the weather or personal recreation desires. It's a commitment, folks, no matter what you want to do. People say, well, I feel led, or I don't feel led. That doesn't enter into it. It's making that decision and moving on it. Number three, you must be excited about the church and the visitation program. Be enthused. Just as negativism breeds negativism, enthusiasm breeds enthusiasm. Number four, you must be loyal to God, the pastor, the church, and the people that you're visiting. Loyalty. What a lost attribute in the church today. To be loyal to our people, to stand by them, to be willing to encourage them and to believe in them. Number five, you must have compassion. Put a face on these people. It's one thing to see a picture in a magazine or on television, but now you are there, you are with these people. That compassion will come when you look into their eyes and you know them. When you begin to put a face on them, the compassion begins to build. Number six, have a neat appearance. Again, presenting the image of the church, presenting the image of the ministry, presenting Jesus Christ as you walk up to that door. Your appearance speaks multitudes. Number seven, be a soul winner. Not only just out there handing out flyers and being the kind of person that is excited and committed and wants to invite people to church, but being out there, being willing to be used of God in that soul-winning capacity. If the opportunity avails itself to win that person to the Lord right there in the home, on the sidewalk, in the street, do it. Do it. And that soul-winning attitude should be burning in your bones. Very important. Number eight, set goals and be organized to achieve the best that God has for you. The only difference between the pile of bricks and the brick wall is how it's organized, folks. Have that plan and go with it. Number nine, be a hard worker. Don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves, to get out there and do whatever it takes. In these kind of programs, in this kind of ministry, you've got to have that whatever it takes attitude. That's what's going to make it happen. Last, number 10, have a positive attitude. Be positive. Be excited. Be enthused. Negativism, folks, will kill. And you know that. If you get somebody that's down, that's negative, all it takes is one person like that saying, well, you know, I had this problem, or we're not seeing the results, or, yeah, and pretty soon the other people are looking, well, you know, I didn't really have great results this week either, and things really didn't go so well for me either. Don't allow that to happen in yourself or within the ranks. Keep a positive attitude. Look out there and say, hey, yeah, that's okay. Maybe we didn't tear the woods up this week. You know, maybe there are some struggles, but we're going to regroup, we're going to gear up, and we're going to go out there and we're going to stay with it. So these are just a few things that I think you can look at in yourself. Ask yourself. You may want to rewind the tape at this point if you're watching it by yourself, or even with your group for a group discussion. Say, how do we measure up with these 10 points? How do I fit in with this? You know, do I need to check up from the neck up, so to speak, and look at it and say, maybe I need to get a little attitude adjustment myself in some of these before I go out and become prepared. But Chris, if we miss these, then there is no way that this thing is ever going to last as a long-term ministry, because it is a perpetual process of self-motivation. Right. David said he encouraged himself. Mm-hmm. He motivated himself. It's nice, folks. It's nice if you've got people that, hey, buddy, boy, I'm glad you're here. Hey, it's nice to have somebody pat you on the back. But what if you don't have it? David encouraged himself. He then encouraged others. And then you know what else he did? He encouraged others to encourage others. Keep it in mind. That's how it works.
And that's got to be the whole philosophy of what we do. You know, I can only do a certain amount, but if I get a group of people around me that are willing to do what I believe and catch the same vision I catch, then all of a sudden my work is multiplied.
Yep.
The number of people we can reach is multiplied. The Bible says something very interesting in Habakkuk, in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2 and verse 2. It says, the Lord answered and said, write the vision, make it plain upon the tables, that he may run that readeth it, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. You know, maybe some of your workers that you're working with, they don't have the same vision you have yet, but you need to make it plain to them. They need to know what your vision is. They need to know what your passion is. I always, with my workers, I talk about the great things that happen to me when I'm out visiting. I encourage my workers. Pastor Bill was just talking about the importance of encouraging your workers. I encourage my workers with stories and things that happen to me out on the route, and I pat them on the back, I promote them, I lift them up, because you know what I've learned? You will attract people that are just like you.
So you get what you are.
You will get what you are. And that's so important for us to learn. If you're not happy with the people that are working with you, maybe you need to look at yourself and not so much at them. Because a lot of times in our life, we get so frustrated with our workers and upset with them because they're not producing the way we want them to produce, and yet we sit back and we spend our time pushing papers and sharpening pencils when the real meat and potatoes of ministry, where we need to be, is on the forefront, like Pastor Bill said in the beginning. First of all, you should be doing visitation before you expect to get other people to do it, whether it's visiting your teenagers, visiting the kids, visiting adults, soul winning. Before you can do any sort of expect them to do any sort of outreach, you have to be willing to do it yourself, and that's important. Take them with you. Let them watch you. Then you let them do a little bit, and then you let them do it all and you watch them. And then they'll be able to go out on their own. And I think as we begin to realize how to train these people, you're going to see that they're going to do what you do. Whether it's good or bad, they're going to do what you do because you're their teacher, and they can only rise as high as their teacher brings them. They cannot go any higher than their teacher. So I think it's important for us to keep that in mind, that when we're out there blazing a trail, going to the forefront, that we're bringing others with us.
You're duplicating yourself, in essence. And we've heard that term. We hear it all the time. But do we do it? Do we actually strive to do that? There are some of you may have got this tape, thought, we need a visitation program in our church. And you'll give it to somebody and say, here, go do this. Hello? Hello? No. You do it yourself. That's what he's saying here. That's one of the main factors in motivation. You know, that's where it starts, folks. It's by you sitting down, leading them. It's, again, pushing the string or pulling it. Setting the example, setting the pace, getting out front, making everybody think it's a parade, whatever it takes. Whatever you want to look at it as, it's you setting the pace. I have to do it in our ministry. He has to do it in his department. All of us become responsible for that. If you're not willing to do that, it's not going to work.
It's true. You should always keep a mindset of training new people too, Pastor Bill. It's easy to think, well, I've got everything set. I've got all my workers in line. I've got all my Sunday school teachers where they need to be. I've got every slot filled, so now I can just sit back and relax. It doesn't work that way because there's always change. There's always things that are going to happen. You should constantly be training new people.
Right.
First of all, not just in case some of your older people leave, but also because you're going to expect to grow. You're going to want to grow, and so that's why you need to train new people. We've talked about taking teenagers out with you. We've talked about that, but realize that you always need to be training new people. You always need to be motivating your old people, because the minute you stop, it's like that car. The minute you stop doing that, it's going to roll back over you. There's a lot of different things that you can do to motivate them, tangible things. I want to spend a few minutes talking about some tangible things, and I'll just go through them quickly. Things that we've done in New York that have been an encouragement and a help, and maybe you'll find them as a help too.
And you know, Chris, different people are motivated by different things. You and I were talking about this the other night. And I don't know you, obviously, because of the medium by which we're communicating here. But different people are motivated. Some in business are motivated by money. Some are motivated by position. In relationships, people are motivated by love that's reciprocated. All different kinds of things motivate people on different levels. We're talking here about practical things that we can all do to motivate others to jump on board. Because the one thing I've learned, Chris, over the years is that everybody wants to be appreciated. Somehow, it's the nature of the beast, folks. I'd like to think I'm above it, but I'm not. I think everybody wants to be appreciated for who they are and for the contribution that they're making. And some of the things that we've jotted down, Chris, we want to go over some of these practical things. We've done some practical things already, but we want you to listen to this segment here very closely, because this will help you to be able to keep this visitation ball rolling way after this tape is done.
Right. Number one, you need to show appreciation to your helpers. A pat on the back is always in order. A smile is always needed. A good job, keep up the good work. Those things are always in order and they're always needed. And so you should never be sparse or be quiet when it comes to bragging on your workers. So number one, just show them. Just tell them how important they are. I'm always telling my workers that there's no way we could reach as many people as we reach if it were just me, or if it were just me and Bill. The bulk of the ministry are those teenagers who go up and down the stairs. The bulk of the ministry is those bus drivers who faithfully come every week driving the bus. You know, we're good, but we can only drive
one bus at a time. And don't just do it mechanically. Boy, I wish I could just open some of your heads and jam this in here. We were just at the mall last night, just wandering around, and we saw, this is how we think, and this is how some of you need to think. We saw these little motivational rocks with little sayings engraved in these rocks, little motivational sayings. And we looked at them, and we both instantly said, boy, let's get these for some of our workers. See, it's a mindset with us. We are always looking for new ways to express our appreciation to the, I mean, this was just last night before we came in to do this today. So it's got to be a mindset, see? And if you can get the thinking, you know what motivates you. You know that if somebody didn't tell you that you were appreciated, or at least act like they appreciate it, you know, it's hard. It's hard, folks. People have the same feelings that you feel. See, most of us think we're the only ones that feel the way we feel. And boy, that can be so detrimental to our thinking. Don't do that. The same things that encourage you, chances are going to encourage other people.
I think another thing that you can do that's real good, Pastor Bill, is the Worker of the Month awards that we have.
Yes.
Every month we have a Worker of the Month and somebody that's done above and beyond the call of duty. They've gone not just the extra mile, but the third and the fourth mile as well. And so we always have awards. Sometimes it's a T-shirt, you know. Sometimes it's something nicer. We've given men suits or women dresses, things like that are tangible things that we can say, this is just our way of showing appreciation. Once a month we highlight one person. We have plaques up that we write their names on the plaques, and that's hung in a prominent place in the foyer of the church. And so things like that are important. Another thing you can do is call your workers up. Just call them up. Hi, we just appreciate you. A phone call goes a long way. Or even a little card, a little postcard. You know, even, you know, as we're speaking now, it's, we're doing this videotape out of the city of New York, and, you know, I'm going to send some of those guys a postcard. I was just out here on this trip, and you know, as we're doing the video on Visitation, thinking about you, and I just appreciate you. That postcard's going to go a long way to somebody who might not get any other mail this week, but some bills. And so things like that can do a lot. Birthday cards, doesn't matter how old they are, how young they are. Everybody likes to get a birthday card, likes to know that you thought about them on their their special day. Another thing is sometimes we'll take our church bulletin and print the names of the people who have done an outstanding job. Man, such and such a person visited X number of hours this week out on the street, or this person brought in so many on their bus. And those things like that will go a long way as far as getting everybody to see what the people doing the visitation are all about. And it will be a thing that doesn't just motivate them, but it'll be a way to get other people involved as well. So that church bulletin idea is a very, very good idea.
And they start taking pride in it then too, Chris. They start taking pride in that ministry, and that becomes very, very important. You know, you say, well, they shouldn't be proud or haughty. I'm not talking about that kind of pride, folks. I'm talking about people that are taking pride in their service for God, that are taking pride in their church. I think that everybody should think that they go to the best church in town. And we have no problem with that. You know, we have no problem communicating that to our workers, and if that's happening with them, boy, they're just, yes, I'm a part of something great that God's doing, and they want to be a part. Then that helps.
I know that oftentimes you will mention the names of the workers from the pulpit.